welcome to Module 48, Infancy and Childhood Social Development. Here are your learning objectives, and here is your vocab. So, how do parent-infant attachment bonds form? So, attachment is an emotional tie with another person. In the case of a child, it's the primary caregivers. And they seek closeness to that caregiver and show distress when they are away from that caregiver. Around the age of 8 months and peaking at the age of 13 months, they also experience stranger anxiety, which is a fear of strangers that infants commonly display. And it starts, like I said, around 8 months. And it's just this more a sense of awareness of being left alone with someone they are not bonded with. Freud believed that babies attach to their mom because mom provides the food. So in the 1950s, Harry and Margaret Harlow conducted an experiment on rhesus monkeys. Now, this experiment, what I'm about to explain to you, was considered or is considered an unethical experiment because it involved socially isolating these monkeys at birth. So infant monkeys were separated at birth, and they had a cloth wire monkey like you see here, and they fed a bottle through it, and the baby monkey would eat from the bottle. And this was their only thing that they could attach to. So in the experiment part, they took the cloth monkey, and then they took the bottle and put it on a wire mesh monkey. So there was no comfort there. There was no warmth, no softness. And they wanted to see if it was the food or if it was that warmth and comfort. And what they found was that up to 22 hours were spent on the cloth monkey, and they only reached over to the wire monkey when they were really hungry. So they showed that Freud's cupboard theory, which is what he called the food attachment theory, to not be correct because they found that touch was a very important aspect of bonding with a baby. Now, some animals, especially like ducklings or birds in general, they imprint. And this is a process by which it's a critical period. As soon as they are born, they imprint or bond or connect to the first moving thing. So Conrad Loewen conducted an experiment where he had these ducklings imprint on him. Now that means once they bond to that first moving thing, they will look to that individual or mother and they will do whatever they do, right? They'll follow, you've seen this before, the mother duck and the little baby ducks following along. So this is important for their survival and learning what they need to do to survive. And that is why it's a critical period, because if they imprinted on an animal that was not conducive to their survival, they would not learn those skills that they need to learn, such as going in the water, flying, things like that. Humans do not imprint. So Mary Ainsworth conducted what's known as the strange situation test in 1979. So she was studying attachment, and a lot of people look to this time period with humans not as a critical period, but a sensitive period, meaning that it's not like a deadline. If this doesn't happen by this time, then it's never going to happen. The bonding process has more wiggle room. It's less defined. So some people prefer the term sensitive period. Responsive parents that are aware of what a child needs are going to lead to what Mary Ainsworth described as securely attached. So in her experiment, she had mothers in like a waiting room area with toys, and then the mother would leave the room. And the mother would be gone for like a minute or so, baby would cry. That's not what they're studying. What they're studying is what happens when the mother returns. If the baby was securely attached, then the child would happily say, oh, mom's back, like go to her, connect with her, give her a hug, and then, okay, I'm going to go take some risks, go look around the room. Everything's fine now. Securely attached. If the child is insecurely attached, meaning throughout their childhood bonding, the parents were not as responsive in meeting the child's needs, they might be insecurely attached and either anxious or avoidant. And if they are anxious, then they might cry or be very clingy. And in general, the insecure child is very clingy. And then insecure avoidant, when the mom returns, they might not want to make eye contact, or the mom might try to be like, look, let's play with this toy, and the kid might shoo it away, kind of showing mom that they're displeased that she left because they don't know when it's going to happen again. So let's talk in all of this about temperament, because a lot of this is saying, oh, there's a lot of responsibility on the parent, but there's also a genetic component here, which is our temperament, which leans more genetic. So if you are, first, temperament is our emotional reactivity, our intensity of emotion. So people who might be quick to express anger might have a more emotionally intense temperament than other people who are more cool and calm, even in frustrating moments. So it is persistent, meaning if you are emotional baby, you're probably an emotional teenager and also adult. So when we look at parenting and we look at this environment versus genetics, we do find that, like I said, difficult 6 to 9 months old, 9-month-olds, there can be an impact based on responsive parenting. So obviously your temperament plays a factor, but if they are receiving responsive parenting, if they're feeling that emotionally intense feeling, but then being securely attached to a caregiver, that's going to help those children become securely attached. So in this whole process, we're also going to be talking in this unit about Erik Erikson's psychosocial stages. And the very first stage, there are 8, it goes through the lifespan. The first stage is trust versus mistrust. So he says there's a conflict at each age that we have to go through. And when we are babies, the conflict is the world a trusting place or is it not? And so he believed that children who achieve secure attachment approach their life, and this is through adulthood, with a sense of basic trust that the world. What about abuse and neglect? So important to note that most people who experience this as children or adults are resilient, meaning they come through this and they are perfectly healthy individuals. Now, obviously, there's not to say that that is an easy path or that there's not a lot of difficulty there, but most people overcome. There are studies that show that abuse results in lower intelligence scores and double the rate of anxiety symptoms. Harlow's monkeys, that was an unethical study because those monkeys were never able to socialize. They were either really anxious or really aggressive and had all sorts of trouble after the experiment. Most abused children do not become abusers, but those who are abusers most likely have, and children who have been abused have a hypersensitivity to angry faces, meaning they're hyper aware. And if there's a questionable, ambiguous facial expression, they will perceive it as anger when it might not be. And there's also an increased risk of health problems, psychological disorders, substance abuse, and criminality. Okay, what about daycares? How do they play into attachment? Well, we find that daycare does not do any harm to attachment bonds with the primary caregiver. High quality care is actually really beneficial. It's warm, it's supportive, it's about interactions in a safe and healthy way with adults. Poor care is something that is noticeable, and that can happen at home or in a daycare. Poor care meaning there's no stimulation, no interaction. It's just kind of like, here's this room, go do your thing, left alone. You know what I mean, for the most part. So when we look at children who are actually 4.5 to 6, so preschool age, we actually see that it's more beneficial for them to be in daycare than to not be in daycare. So while they are dealing with all these attachment things, they are also developing a sense of self. Who am I? That is our self-concept. And once they develop this sense of self, which takes a while, you're still figuring that out in elementary school, you are also developing your sense of self-esteem. What am I? How do I feel about that self-concept that I've defined? So Charles Darwin said that self-awareness occurs when we can recognize ourselves in a mirror. So there's something called the red dot test, where you place a dot on a baby's nose, and if they touch their nose, they have self-awareness. If they touch the mirror, their nose through the mirror, then they do not have self-awareness. So this usually occurs 15 to 18 months. So parenting styles. There are 4 parenting styles. So the first is authoritative, and this is the most backed by research to overall, because every child is different, but overall be the best outcome for children. And this is when there is a lot of support. The parent is very responsive, but also has high expectations for the child. So they will listen to you, support you, but also have those expectations for you to challenge you. An authoritarian, right? Think of more like a dictator type parenting, where they're not going to be supportive and really listening to you as much and taking into consideration your perspective, but they are going to place a lot of demands on you. Authoritarian. Permissive parenting is that very warm and supportive parenting, but they're not placing demands on you. And then the last one is they're not supportive, but they're also not demanding. So this is really like neglectful parenting, and it's very just uninvolved. So like I said, authoritative parenting leads to the highest self-esteem and self-reliance and social competence. Authoritarian parenting, children, they tend to have less social skills and less self-esteem because they've been really pressured to have these high expectations but not felt supported. So they really have a lot of self-blame when they don't meet those expectations. Permissive parenting children tend to be a little more aggressive or immature because their parents have really supported them in even some behaviors that are more immature. So again, remember, this is correlation, not causation. Every child is different, and it depends on the social world, the cultural world, the personality, the temperament of the child. So westernized cultures value independence, while many Asian and African cultures value emotional closeness or interdependent relationships. In some of those countries, the children might sleep in the same bed with the mom, spend time with the family, like grandparents, not in a daycare. They might encourage a family self, which is like they are like one with their family. So if they do something shameful, it actually brings shame to the whole family. Bringing honor brings honor to the whole family. There's so many different examples of different types of child rearing, like nannies, for example, boarding schools. All of this plays a role, obviously, on child development. Your one way of thinking about it might be best for you, but don't assume that the way another culture does it is wrong for them. So takeaways. Remember the Harry Harlow experiment. That is an important experiment, and it showed that babies attach for contact comfort, not food. Some animals imprint on the first moving thing they see, which is Conrad Loewen's. Mary Ainsworth research shows that responsive parents create securely attached children. Daycare has shown to increase thinking and language skills. Children in terms of experiencing neglect and abuse. There are different parenting styles, but authoritative is overall the best according to research. And that sums up module 48, and I will see you in class.